For this lesson, open up studyinblue.psd in your working folder. Now, we are going to be using this document, same document, in this lesson and in the next lesson. So I have some additions in here, no peeking yet. We're going to stick to Study in Blue for this lesson. Up to this point, what have we done? We have looked at the pen tool and the freeform tool, and we've drawn some basic rudimentary paths and shapes. What I want to do is I want that flower. But up to this point, we've done circles and triangles. And looking at that flower, it might be close to a circle, but it isn't, and it sure ain't no triangle. What I need is a way to select and make a path out of the shape of that flower. Now, if you are good with the pen tool, right over here, you could do it. It would take a bit of time, but you could do it. But to me, it's all about getting the best I can in the shortest amount of time. Efficiency, so I can get more done in the same amount of time, and it leaves me more time to be creative. So to me, I could do it, but is there another way? Well, look at that flower. The edge of the flower is what I'm talking about here. I see an edge, so does the computer. Photoshop sees an edge on a flat two-dimensional surface as a shift, like a shift in brightness. If you've got that shift, you've got the edge. So let's do this. Let's switch over to our freeform pen tool. Now, in the freeform pen tool, we know what it does. It draws things freeform. But check this out. You have something called a magnetic option right there. And if you select that, what it will try to do is magnetize, in a sense, to the edge of the flower. Now, if you click the little gear right here, you do have options: curve fit, width, contrast frequency, and pen pressure. Now, things like width. How many pixels on either side of the edge can it look for the edge? We have a pretty defined edge. I think 10's more than enough. Contrast. How much of a shift in the brightness of the pixels is required for me to say, as Photoshop, that's an edge? We'll leave that at 10%. Frequency is how often do I add an anchor point to hold the shape together. The higher the number, the more you add. The lower the number, the less. Let's leave those at default and check it out. Now remember, we are doing a path. Don't forget that, not a shape. So you want to make sure you got path, and that means we need to look at the paths palette because that's where it's going to be. So we start right about here, and you click and you begin dragging over. And you go, well, I don't know, that's a lot of anchor points. I could probably do it better than that. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to select over like this. Let's delete that work path. Let's go back into this button here, and let's lower the frequency to something like about 20. Come back out here again. Start about in the same place. And as you can see, it's creating the shape with less complexity. Remember what anchor points actually are. They're math. But the math is the complexity. The more anchor points you have, the more math is required to draw the shape. Now, in the case of something like this, I don't think we're really having that much of a problem. But if you've got complicated shapes, they can have too many anchor points. We're going to get all the way back here until we see that nice little circle come up and click. And let's do this. Let me come back over here. Let me turn that off for a second so you can see it. That looks very good. And we did it with a minimum amount of anchor points. Now, let's go into paths because it's defined as a work path. A work path, by definition, is a temporary thing. Okay, I want to make it permanent. So let's double-click on the word work path and call it flower. Now, it will still be there tomorrow if you don't give it a name, but you can have more than one path, and it's not a bad idea to give these things names so you know what they are and what they represent. So what we did, I really do like this feature, is we used the freeform pen tool with the magnetic option because we had an edge that we could go with. In other words, we had the edge. And we played around a little bit with the frequency because we felt it was making too complicated of a shape. So you can always come back and play around with it. But having that particular selection as a path gives us control over it when we go into the next lesson. So this is what I want you to do here. Let's go up to the word File on the pull-down menu, and let's go down to Save As. This is the one we'll use in the next lesson. Let's call this one Study in Blue 2. Now I'm going to put mine on the desktop so I can find it real quick. I would suggest or recommend that you put it in your working folder for this chapter. That probably makes the best sense. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And if it asks you about this, just click OK. There you go. We are now ready for the next lesson with our very precise mathematical selection.